Good morning, Eagles class. We left chapter 12 of Pig Heart Boy yesterday with Cam about to have his operation. Today we're going to read chapter 13. I will warn you it is quite a long chapter. The chapter is called Hurt. Someone was calling me from far, far away, a quiet, muffled voice. Cameron! Cameron! The voice grew louder and more urgent. It rushed at me like a Eurostar train. Cameron! Cameron! And then I was awake. It was dark. It took a few moments before I realised that my eyes were closed, but I was awake. Cameron! Wake up now, Cameron! I was awake, and my chest hurt. Not badly, but it ached. I tried to take a deep breath, but a spear of pain shot through me from front to back. I instantly held my breath, waiting for the pain to ease, which it did slowly. I opened my eyes. Dr. Bryce and Dr. Elrich were looking down at me. They wore masks and gloves, but their eyes were happy, more than happy. Their eyes shone with delight. That's when I knew I'd had the operation. I'd made it. I was still here. I smiled and the effort exhausted me. I tried to speak, but my tongue was stuck to the roof of my mouth and my throat hurt. In fact, my throat was hurting quite badly. I hadn't expected that. I tried to swallow, but my mouth was as dry as Mars. Hello, Cameron, Dr. Bryce beamed at me. Even with the mask over his face, I could see that he was beaming. I raised my hand and put it over my throat. Dr. Bryce nodded. Try not to speak. You've had an airway down your throat, so your throat will be sore for a day or two. My heart's gone. Only then did I remember. Only then did I dare to think it. My old rubbishy heart had gone, and in its place a brand new strong pig's heart. And then it happened. It crept upon me slowly, that I didn't realise what was happening until I was in the middle of it. I was hurting. Well, not so much hurting as aching uncomfortably. My chest ached, my stomach ached, I wanted to cough, I had a headache, my throat ached, I felt sick. There was probably a millimetre long hair on the back of my hand somewhere that was comfortable, but that was about it. I tried to ask for help. I tried to tell the doctors how I felt. My tongue refused to move. The doctors continued to beam at me. We'll let you get your rest now, said Dr. Bryce. And when you wake up again, you can see your mum and dad. I closed my eyes and just like that, I was out of it. For the next day, I drifted in and out of myself. At least that's what it felt like. I don't remember too much about it. It just seemed that every time I opened my eyes, someone was smiling at me. Mum and Dad, the doctors, the nurses. I even dreamt that Trudy was smiling at me. And then at last I opened my eyes and I was awake, really awake and aware. How are we feeling, Cameron? Dr. Elrich was instantly at my side. Smiling. I coughed, instantly felt as if my chest was going to come apart. You will have a cough for a couple of days. That's the anaesthetic, I'm afraid. How's your throat? I swallowed hard. My mouth was no longer as dry as before. My throat wasn't as sore either, thank goodness. Better, I croaked. Was that really my voice? It sounded like a rusty frog. Would you like a little ice to suck on? Yes, please. I was still croaking. The doctor used a teaspoon to fish a small chunk of ice out of the water jug on the table by my bed. She popped it into my grateful mouth. It was cool and wet and actually delicious. You are doing phenomenally well. You can sit up, and if the tests we run today are favourable, maybe we'll have you walking a couple of steps tomorrow. I stared at the doctor. She had to be kidding. I'd only just had the heart operation. What was going on? Were they short of beds or something? It's quite common practice. The doctor's smile broadened. She could obviously read my expression. Not too long ago, it was standard practice to stay in bed for weeks after an operation. Now it's recognised that that's actually bad for you. We like to get our patients up and about as quickly as possible, even heart patients. Do you understand? I nodded, looking around. I took more of an interest in my surroundings. I wasn't in my room anymore. There were machines all around me, and I had an intravenous drip attached to each arm. Pads on my chest were hooked up to the heart monitor beside the bed. I had what looked like crocodile clips attached to the ends of 2 fingers, and there was some kind of cuff around one of my ankles. I felt like Pinocchio before he had had his strings cut. I looked up at the intravenous bags on either side of me. I pointed to the left one. "What's in that?" I indicated with my hand. "It contains your anti-rejection drug." "And that one?" "Dextrose and saline." "Sugar and salt water to make sure you don't become dehydrated." Dr. Bryce then entered the room. "How are we feeling today?" "Fine," I shrugged. And I was feeling fine in a peculiar, detached kind of way. Somehow it was all a bit of an anticlimax. I'd spent so many weeks thinking about the operation and the days leading up to it that I hadn't really given much thought to what would happen afterwards. And now here I was with not much of a clue as to what should or would happen next. "We're amazed with your progress. You're doing extremely well," Dr. Bryce told me. "Does that mean I can go home soon?" I asked. There was no escaping the look that passed between Dr. Bryce and Dr. Eldridge. "Is something wrong?" I asked immediately. "Nothing for you to worry about." Dr. Bryce's smile was as wide as it was false. I studied him carefully. "I thought you were going to be honest with me and not treat me like an idiot," I said, disappointed. Dr. Bryce shook his head slowly. "I'm sorry if that's how it came across. It's just that we've had some bad news today." "No, not about you or your operation," he added quickly when he saw the look on my face. "At least, not directly." The doctor paused, took a deep breath, and turned to Dr. Eldridge. "Janice, could you go and get Cameron's parents, please?" "What's going on?" I struggled to sit further up in the bed. The bleep of the heart monitor was getting faster, as if I needed that to tell me that I was getting anxious. Mum and Dad came into the room, their expressions grim. Mum was carrying a newspaper, and in that instant I knew what had happened. "I did ask all of you to keep this strictly confidential until I'd formally released the details to the media," Dr. Bryce said to no one in particular, which is how I knew that he knew it was me who'd let the cat out of the bag. "Marlon gave me his word that he wouldn't tell anyone, not even his parents. I couldn't deny that I'd been the one to blab, but I still tried to defend myself." "Well, this newspaper speaks for itself, doesn't it?" Mum said tersely. Dad shook his head. "I thought John and Erica were our friends." I thought of Marlon's mum and dad and all the times we'd been back and forth to each other's house. Our 2 families had even toured around the Lake District together. "I'm sure that rag made them an offer they couldn't refuse," Dr. Bryce said with disgust. "But they must have gone to the newspaper with the story to sell in the first place," Mum pointed out. Okay, so here, if you can see, is the newspaper story about Cameron and his pig heart transplant that's in the newspaper that Dr. Bryce has now got. So it looks like Marlon has been to the newspaper with the story. So I'm going to read this article to you now, okay? Daily Press world exclusive: the boy with a pig's heart inside his body. Today, the Daily Press can exclusively reveal that Cameron Kelsey, age 14, of Larkin Road, Dilworth in London, has made medical history. In a dramatic 12-hour operation, sure to send waves of controversy around the world, the heart of a pig has been transplanted into the body of Cameron Kelsey. With time running out for the sick child and no likely prospect of a human donor, the only hope seemed to be the imminent surgeon and immunologist Dr. Richard Bryce. His pioneering techniques for overcoming rejection between species have opened the way for a new wave of transplant between animals and man. Cameron Kelsey, the teenager from Dilworth, is remarkably cool about being a guinea pig on the frontiers of medicine. Asked about the special problems of using a pig heart, he said, "It's simple, really. The only thing I have to be careful about now is taking my medicine to stop my body rejecting my new heart." His mother, Catherine, said, "Cameron knows the risks. He knows that he faces a lifetime of checkups and anti-rejection drugs, but all he can talk about is going swimming and playing football." Cameron's heart was damaged beyond repair by a viral infection 2 years ago, and his life ever since has been a slow decline, punctuated by major crises. "When Dr. Bryce approached us, it was a shock, yes, but it was the chance for my son to lead a normal life. I leapt at the chance," said Mrs. Kelsey. Although the idea of transplantation from other species into humans has been discussed and debated for a few years now, this is the first time that such an operation has actually gone ahead. Dr. Bryce has received media attention before when he first presented his opinion that the only way to overcome the shortage of inhuman organs available for transplantation was to look at the organs of other species. No stranger to controversy, Dr. Bryce has long sought to make his name and his fortune in this field. Cameron Kelsey is known to be recovering in a private hospital and is thought to be doing well. Friends close to the family told us that Cameron's parents allowed Cameron to make the final decision. After long and agonising deliberation, Cameron finally decided that he really had no other choice. "It's simple, really. I had to choose between living and dying, and I choose to live," said Cameron today. "And I'm feeling fine and fighting fit. I'd do the same thing again tomorrow." Cameron continued, "I can't wait to get back to school and start leading the life of a normal boy. I can't wait to swim and run and play football without getting breathless every 2 seconds. Mrs. Solar Sang, headmistress of Cameron's school, Ashmead Primary, said, "I knew that Cameron was in hospital for a transplant, but no, I didn't know." And then it says continued on page 4. So the article obviously continues further on in the newspaper, but that's all that it shows in the book. I stretched out my hand for the newspaper. Mum gave it to me without another word. Just one look at the headline was enough to confirm my worst fears. "Cameron, you're to stay away from all of them, including Marlon. Do you hear me?" Mum fumed. "This whole business will now be turned into a 3-ring circus." Dr. Bryce shook his head. "And each of us will be considered exhibits." "Maybe it's just a 1-week wonder," Dad said hopefully. "I'm sure the press will find something else to interest them tomorrow." Both Dr. Bryce and Dr. Ehrlich stared at Dad in stunned amazement. Mum just looked at him as if he'd lost his marbles. Me, I had other things on my mind. What things do you think Cameron had on his mind at that moment in time? Marlon was my best friend. And best friends didn't do that to each other. Friends didn't betray each other. Friends could keep secrets. I looked down at the newspaper again. The headline shrieked at me. "I can't understand it," I whispered. "Why did Marlon do it? Why?" And at that moment I felt more hurt inside than from anything the doctors had done to me over the last few days. Marlon was supposed to be my friend. In his shoes, I would never have told anybody, never. Your friend's motives aren't the issue now. We all have to decide how to proceed from here. Mr. and Mrs. Kelsey, perhaps we could discuss this outside, Dr. Bryce suggested. "No, this concerns me, doesn't it? This is about me." "Isn't it? Shouldn't I be part of the discussion?" Dad shook his head. "We don't want you to be any more upset than you already are, Cameron." "I couldn't be any more upset, but don't worry, I'm not about to keel over." Mum nodded slowly, then smiled. I don't think it's a very good idea, Dad began. Mum shrugged. Mike, as Cameron said, this does involve him too, and if he feels up to it and Dr. Bryce doesn't have any objections, then I don't see why not. Dr. Bryce took a good hard look at me and then visibly relaxed. Cameron, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, our first priority has to be to protect you. If we don't do something and fast, the press will be all over you and your family, like a cheap perfume. He sounded like he was quoting a line from one of those old black and white detective movies that Nana likes so much. It was so funny peculiar to hear him say something like that I almost smiled. Almost. So what do we do? Asked Mum. We spike their guns, Dr. Bryce replied without hesitation. I'll call an immediate press conference to tell the press exactly what happened. So do you all have somewhere else to stay other than your house? Dad frowned. Why? Because I think you should all lie low for a while, just until this hullabaloo has died down. Lie low? We're not outlaws or criminals. Why should we lie low? Mum snapped out. Believe me, it's the best thing to do, Dr. Bryce soothed. It won't be for long, just a month or two. A month or two? Mum wasn't the only one who was shocked. The press can be relentless. No. Mum's voice was quiet and all the more firm because of it. I'm not going to let the press, or anyone else for that matter, hound us out of our house. We haven't done anything wrong. I'm not going to let anyone treat us as if we have. Mrs. Kelsey, I really would recommend. We are not moving out of our house. And just as soon as Cameron is fit enough, he's going back to school. Mum's heels were well and truly dug in now. I'm sorry, Dr. Bryce, but I think my wife is right. We'd have to face this sooner or later. Surely it's better to do it now and get it over with. Then we can all go back to normal, said Dad. Mr. and Mrs. Kelsey, I know you're underestimating just what a pack of vultures you'll be dealing with. I've had the press camping on my doorstep before. I know what I'm talking about, Dr. Bryce said sternly. As long as we have each other, we can handle it, said Dad. It'll be a 1-week wonder and then this whole thing will blow over. Mum looked up at Dad and smiled. For the first time in a long time, they smiled at each other and I was temporarily forgotten. But I didn't mind. To be honest, it was nice to see. It made a change. I think you're both deluding yourselves, and for Cameron's sake, I would urge you to reconsider. Dr. Bryce wasn't about to give up. We'll be okay. Mum turned to smile at the doctor. The sooner we can get back to normal, the better. The doctor shook his head. I'll call the press conference for tomorrow, and another when Cameron is ready to go home. He sighed. Are you both prepared to take part in the second conference with me? Dad turned to Mum, a questioning look on his face. Is that really necessary? Mum asked. I would recommend it. It's better to throw the wolves a morsel or two than to have them devour you alive, believe me, Dr. Bryce replied. Then we'll do it. Cameron is going to be fine, and that's what I want to tell the world. So when can I go home? I asked Dr. Bryce. If you carry on like this, I don't see any reason why you couldn't go home within the next month. The next month? I said, dismayed. That long? Cameron, the worst thing I could do now is to send you home before I'm 100% convinced that the anti-rejection therapy is working. Don't forget, this particular type of transplant has never been done before. I slouched back against my pillows, disappointed. All I wanted to do now was to go home, then go to school and show all my friends that I was the same as them. I wanted to play football and swim and dance. I smiled ruefully. I guess the truth of the matter was I wanted to show off. But until then, I just have to be patient. Right, there we go. Thank you for listening to that. Hope you enjoyed it. Lots of things to discuss in there, I'm sure, with your parents. So chat with them and good luck with answering the questions. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.